On New Year's Day, 1915, around 1,200 men, women and children boarded a small coal mining train and departed the Australian outback town of Broken Hill for a picnic at the nearby village of Singleton. 3 kilometres out, the party came under fire. A brief skirmish would be known as the Battle of Broken Hill, and the firefight is considered by many to be the first terrorist attack on Australian soil. There were 2 snipers taking aim at the commuters. The first was Mullah Abdullah, who ran a halal butchery on the outskirts of Broken Hill, and his co-conspirator, Gul Badshah Muhammad, was an ice cream vendor. And police reports would later list Muhammad as Turkish, Afghan or Afridi, while Abdullah was described as Indian. And both men were well known in town. Abdullah had been in Australia for 25 years. Muhammad had come to Australia as a youth and had left to fight in the Turkish army before returning to Australia in 1912. Both men were eventually surrounded and killed, but not before they took the lives of 4 civilians. Police discovered letters from both men claiming an allegiance to the Ottoman Empire and claimed to be acting as subjects of the Sultan. Their true allegiance was finally known after 25 years living in Australia. This terrorist attack took place at a time when Australia had tough immigration policy. Up until the end of World War II, Australia implemented what is known as the White Australia policy, whereby the vast majority of immigrants allowed in came from England, Ireland or Scotland. Most other immigrants were turned away. Now, agree with this policy or not, it served to maintain the nation's Judeo-Christian heritage. It preserved a modicum of loyalty to the empire, and the result of this was that far fewer citizens with questionable allegiance to God, king and country were allowed in. But Australia needed more migrants than the aforementioned nations could supply. In 1945, just 2.7% of the population was born overseas. In response to this slowdown, the White Australia policy was relaxed, and more migrants began to arrive from other nations. The 1960s brought refugees from the Middle East. In the 70s, they came from Asia. In the 2000s, it has been migrants from Africa, and the numbers are rising. In 2024, the government brought in a net total of 340,000 migrants, almost 100,000 more than pre-pandemic levels. The majority of those migrants came from India, China, the Philippines and Nepal. And not all these migrants pose a security threat. Some are genuine in their desire for a new life as Australian citizens. But as the Battle of Broken Hill does show, migrants can live within a nation for decades while never truly assimilating and pledging true allegiance to the host nation. A more recent example of this is Man Monis, an Iranian refugee who came to Australia in 1996 and was granted political asylum in 2001. 13 years later, Monis would be killed by police after taking 18 people hostage in Sydney's Lint Cafe. Monis killed 2 hostages and called on Australia to officially announce that it was under attack from the Islamic State. And this is another warning of the inherent dangers of open immigration. Since that time, millions more migrants have flooded into Australia, many of whom share no love for Australia's heritage, customs and laws. You can see that in Melbourne, where gangs of African youth are hacking each other to pieces with machetes in broad daylight. You see it when anti-Semitic mobs burn flags and chant "death, death to the IDF" at protests across the nation. These are not Australian values, nor do these people want to share in those values. And opening the borders to such people is not biblical. In fact, it's spiritually dangerous to any nation. You can see how God handled immigration with the ancient Israelites. God certainly commanded Israel not to oppress a foreigner, as it says in Exodus 22, verse 21, nor to mistreat him, as it says in Leviticus 19 and verse 33. God certainly loves all peoples and ethnicities. He has no favorites, as Acts 10:34 brings out, but he does have a special relationship with the modern descendants of Israel. Why? For the sake of teaching mankind. Ancient Israel was intended to be the model nation for other people to look to. Moses told the people, See, I have taught you decrees and laws as the Lord my God commanded me, so that you may follow them in the land you are entering to take possession of it. Observe them carefully, for this will show your wisdom and understanding to the nations, who will hear about all these decrees and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. And that's found in Deuteronomy 4 and verse 6. And here we see God intended all nations to look to Israel as an example, that they might also come to know the eternal God. But Moses also warned in verse 9, only be careful and watch yourselves closely, so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen, or let them fade from your heart as long as you live. Teach them to your children, and to their children after them. But what would happen if Israel's descendants like Australia, Britain, and the United States abandoned that role and rejected God? God warned that if they did, they would suffer curses to correct them and to remind them. And we can see that in Deuteronomy 28 verses 15 through 19. Those curses include this prophecy in verses 43 through 45. The foreigners who reside among you will rise above you higher and higher, but you will sink lower and lower. They will lend to you, but you will not lend to them. They will be the head, but you will be the tail. All these curses will come on you. They will pursue you and overtake you until you are destroyed, because you did not obey the Lord your God and observe the commandments and decrees he gave you. Here God shows he's willing to use foreigners in our midst to correct us. As Australia drifts further from her Judeo-Christian heritage and embraces more and more of the customs and cultures of other nations, we can expect these curses to take effect as God strives to remind the people who they are and where they come from. Mass immigration from countries that do not share our values has a dangerous spiritual effect. It takes our nation further away from her Christian heritage. God will not sit idly by as his people drift away from him. And if you would like to know more about the history of Israel, where those descendants are today, and what God is doing to reveal himself to them again, then consider liking and subscribing below. And please order a free copy of Herbert W. Armstrong's book, The United States and Britain in Prophecy. There'll be a link in the show notes below.